Now, once upon a time, not all that long ago, and not in a galaxy far, far away, people had to ask a question in code. Not out loud, not directly, not even necessarily safely, just quietly, carefully, sometimes with a glance more than a sentence. Are you a friend of Dorothy? Anybody remember that? Yeah. But the real question behind that simple question was this: are you gay? But more importantly, are you like me? Are you safe for me? Do I belong with you? Because for so many people, queer people especially, belonging was not something that you could just assume. It was something you had to discern and risk and hope for without knowing if it was going to be given. And Friend of Dorothy wasn't just slang. It was a callback to the 1939 movie The Wizard of Oz, which starred that old gay icon, Judy Garland, right? And the notion was about survival, about longing, about the fragile beginnings of community. And if we're honest, that question has not entirely disappeared. Even now, people walk into new spaces, churches, communities, relationships, asking some version of it. Is this a place where I can be seen and known for who I am? Is this a place where I'll be safe, where I belong? And that question sits right at the heart of this Oscar-nominated short film, Friend of Dorothy, that we're reflecting on today. I recommend it highly. It's a small, intimate little film, just 26 minutes, 4 characters, took 4 days to film, but it opens up something much bigger, and it stars that great British actor Miriam Margolyes, who is a lovely old dyke, in the title role as Dorothy, and Stephen Fry, also openly queer, a fabulous new actor, Alistair Nwachukwu, who plays the character JJ. JJ's gone to be with the kids. I have no idea of his orientation, but he does a great job. And for such a tiny, compact little film, it raises a few interesting spiritual themes. Chosen community as sacred space, and the ache of searching and recognition and codes and language and revelation, and a gentle theology of belonging. And without giving anything away, in 26 minutes there's not much to give away, but the film invites us into a moment of quiet searching. A person stepping into unfamiliar space, trying to read the room, trying to understand the unspoken rules, trying to figure out, is anyone here a friend of Dorothy? You know, it's tender, it's awkward, and it's deeply human. There are no grand speeches, no instant transformations, just small interactions and hesitations and glances and possibility. And that's what makes it so real. Because belonging, more often than not, doesn't arrive with certainty. It arrives like that. And in the Gospel of Luke, we meet 2 people walking along a road to Emmaus. Now, there are a couple things to notice about that account from Luke. First of all, no one now living has any freaking idea where Emmaus was. Only that it was about a half-day's walk from Jerusalem. And archaeologists all have their theories on a half a dozen possible sites, but no one really knows. Okay? And then the writer of Luke tells us one of the disciples on the road to Emmaus, wherever it is named Cleopas, and the other one isn't named. So in my mind, some 2,000 years later, that means I can imagine that Emmaus is anywhere and everywhere. It might even be walking distance from wherever I am. It might even be right here. And I can also imagine a name for that other disciple, because again, no one can agree on who it might have been because no one knows. Some folks suggest it might have been Mrs. Cleopas, or Cleopas's boyfriend, or me, or you. In other words, this story is universal. It can be about here and now and about you and me. So maybe wherever those disciples were, you've been there too sometime. They are grieving. They are confused and disoriented, kind of in a brain fog, and I can identify. Everything they thought they understood about the world had been shattered, and the one that they had hoped would bring liberation had been executed, and the future they imagined was gone. And as they walk, they're talking it through, trying to make sense of what's happened, and then someone joins them, a stranger who walks with them, listens to them deeply, asks them questions. But here's the strange, almost haunting detail of that story. They don't recognize him. Jesus is right there, walking beside them, and they have no clue. So imagine the quiet tension of that moment, because in a way, they're asking the same question. Are you one of us? Do you understand? Can we trust you with our story and our feelings? And Jesus doesn't answer that question directly, not right away. Instead, he continues to walk alongside them. He listens. He explains the scriptures to them, and still they don't recognize him. Because belonging doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds in conversations, in shared journeys, in the slow work of being present. And then finally, as they reach their destination, the moment comes when the stranger begins to move on. And this is where something shifts. They invite him, stay with us. Stay with us because it's evening, because the day is ending. Stay with us because something in us recognizes something in you that we can't even name yet. And he does. He stays. He sits at table with them. He takes bread. He blesses it. He breaks it and gives it to them. And suddenly, their eyes are opened and they recognize him. But here's the part that always gets me. They don't say, oh my gosh, now we see you. They say, were not our hearts burning within us? In other words, something was already happening. Something was already alive and emerging, and something was already true even before we had the words for it. And that's where I want to bring in another voice from the prophet Isaiah. Fear not, I have called you by your true name. You are mine, you are precious in my sight. I love you. So before recognition, before anyone confirms your belonging, before anyone asks the coded question, God has already spoken. You are named, and you are known, and you are claimed in love. Because here's the tension we live in. We long to be recognized by one another. I sometimes say the thing we long for most and the thing we sometimes fear the most is to be known and loved for exactly who we are. We long for it, and it scares us. But we need community. We need friendship. We need spaces where we can be fully ourselves. And yet those spaces aren't always easy to find. They're not always perfect. God knows. They're not always immediately welcoming. Sometimes we walk into them unsure. Sometimes we leave still wondering. And sometimes we're the ones who don't recognize the holy right in front of us. And that's where the film meets the gospel, meets Isaiah. Because in Friend of Dorothy, belonging is not guaranteed. And in Emmaus, recognition is delayed. But in Isaiah, belovedness is already declared. You are beloved. Which brings us, strangely, beautifully, somewhat unexpectedly, back to Oz. To Oz. And Dorothy, in The Wizard of Oz, spends her journey surrounded by companions who believe they're lacking something essential. The scarecrow thinks he needs a brain. The Tin Man believes he needs a heart. The lion is convinced he has no courage. And yet, how many people have seen that movie? How many have seen it probably 10 times? Yeah. And yet, all along the way, we see this, that they are already wise, already compassionate, already brave. They are already what they think they are not. They just need it to be named, to be recognized. And in the end, Dorothy realizes something else, that the ones who journeyed with her, the ones who helped her become who she is, are not strangers at all. They're the ones who journeyed with her all along, and they're the ones who lead her home. And she says those words that we all know. There's no place like home. But here's the thing. We know, don't we, that home hasn't always been a place of safety for everyone. Which is why that coded question, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?" mattered so much, because it was a way of searching for home in a world that didn't always offer one. Because it wasn't really about Dorothy, it was about finding a place where you could finally exhale. A place where you didn't have to translate yourself, a place where you didn't have to hide, a place that could become, maybe for the first time, home. And that's why what we do here matters. Because we hang a sign at the front of this sanctuary that says, "Welcome home." Bienvenue, bienvenido, welcome home. And that's not decoration. It's not sentiment. It's theology, and it's a promise. It's also our collective calling and responsibility. Because to say welcome home is to say you don't have to ask in code here. You don't have to wonder if you belong. You don't have to wait to be recognized before you're loved by God, because God has already called you by your true name. You're already known, you're precious, and you're loved. But that doesn't mean the work is finished. Because, let's be honest, even in places that say welcome home, people can still feel like strangers. Even here, someone may still be quietly asking, "Is anyone here a friend of Dorothy? Is this really for me? Will I be seen here? Will I be safe here?" And so the call of the gospel is not just to receive belonging for ourselves, it is to practice and embody belonging, to be the ones who walk alongside others without rushing them, with listening deeply, making space at the table, and saying with our words and with our lives, "Stay with us." Because here's the truth. On the road to Emmaus, the one who goes unrecognized is Jesus. But in our world, it's more often people, real, living, breathing people who go unrecognized. People whose stories we don't yet understand. People whose identities we don't immediately know how to name. People who are still asking quietly, "Is anyone here a friend of Dorothy?" And what if the call of the gospel is this? To be the ones who answer, not in code, not in hesitation, not in fear, but in love. To say, "Yes, you're safe here, you're seen here, you belong here." And maybe, just maybe, as we do that, as we walk together, as we listen deeply, as we break bread, our eyes may be open too. And we might discover what those disciples did, Cleopas and you and me, that Christ has been with us all along, in the stranger, in the friend, in the one who wasn't sure they truly belonged. And our hearts will burn within us, because in that moment we will know we are not alone. We are known, and we are at last home. Amen.